William of Normandy, William the Conqueror, needed a new way of doing things. Once he conquered England, he spent most of his time away. He needed a system of strong government to get things done while he was mucking about in France.
William the Conqueror didn't muck about. He used so much wonderful money to maintain control over both his territories, fund his military campaigns, and build his castles. A reliable system of soldiers was required to see off any threats and defend the country.
That's a lot of changes. I fear change.
Actually, he continued with some of the existing Anglo-Saxon systems. And so, for all these reasons, William the Conqueror developed the feudal system. When we Normans took control, we modified the existing hierarchy of land ownership to create the feudal system. The feudal system had 4 levels. On the top level, the king. The next level, the tenants-in-chief, which included around 200 Norman barons and bishops. Below this, knights, or under-tenants. Way down the bottom were the peasants, sometimes known as serfs or villeins. The king directly owned 20% of the land, 25% was owned by the church, and the rest was managed by the levels below. Borrowing land under this agreement was called holding land in tenure. If you held land in tenure, you were known as a vassal, and your feudal superior was a lord. Tenants-in-chief were the closest and most loyal to the king. They promised the king money and an army. They provided soldiers and had a duty to garrison the king's castles for 40 days per year. Knights served in the army and personally protected the tenants-in-chief and the peasants. How brave! In return, they were given land and could be known as Lord of the Manor.
They gave a bit of their land to us peasants, but we had to obey the Lord of the Manor in return. We gave him crops and had to work on his land for a bunch of days without pay. This was known as labour service. Some of us were free, but most couldn't leave the Lord's land without permission.
That's the feudal system. It worked well.
It worked well for those above us.
Don't complain. You still have your health and your radish.
If the vassal failed to deliver their side of the agreement, the penalty was forfeiture, which meant the king took your land back.
We had some very fancy ceremonies and contracts to remind us. We would formally pay homage for holding the land in tenure.
The vassal kneeled before the Lord, bareheaded and without weapons. The vassal would clasp their hands as if in prayer and stretch them out to submit himself to the Lord.
The Lord would then grasp the hands and declare his acceptance. He would swear an oath of fealty, which is a promise to be faithful.
It was a religious act. The church had a big say in things. It was believed that if you broke the oath, you'd be punished by God.
The changes in power and land ownership needed to be recorded and confirmed. In 1085, William launched a massive undertaking, a survey.
He basically invented market research.
It was known as the Domesday Survey because the lists were so detailed, it was as if God was carrying out his last judgment on Doomsday. Doom was the English term for judgment or law.
The survey was completed in less than a year. It was a record of who owned what in virtually the whole country. It was really easy when they got to me. The country was divided into 7 circuits, and the visits began. Commissioners toured each circuit and asked a bunch of questions about land ownership and changes across the period 1066 to 1085. Tenants-in-Chief verified the returns to make sure they were an accurate record. The survey didn't cover the whole country. Some areas weren't fully under Norman control yet.
The survey was an important part of Norman control, and it allowed William to charge rent and tax people more efficiently. Now he could pay for that expensive army.
Considering he couldn't read and couldn't speak English, he was pretty organised.
He was tremendous.
Aye, he was so tremendous that at his funeral, his body couldn't fit into his coffin and it exploded. Mourners ran because the smell was so rancid.
Interesting anecdotes, peasant. For that, I shall not torture you.
Thanks. Here's a summary sheet.